In the last 20 years, we've seen an emergence of non-state actors and just various actors emerge that are not typical to what Canadian defence may have seen, say, 50 or 100 years ago. We think World War I, we think World War II, and we see a lot of, between trench warfare and air warfare. But now we're dealing with threats like cybersecurity and other forms of terrorism. Would you be able to outline what some of the new non-conventional threats have become and how the Canadian Forces has met the challenge to defend Canadian sovereignty with these threats?
Yeah, it is an evolving battle space, as we say in the business, and these are rapidly changing dimensions to modern warfare, and it's not just technology; it's actually at the fundamental essence of the nature of warfare. In very simple terms. What you described as historic conflict is what we would refer to as kinetic activity. So, and that is still a key element of warfare in terms of preparations and equipping and training personnel. But then you have this rapidly expanding dimension of non-kinetic activity, and this includes areas like cyber, information, influence activity. This is where you get into the dimensions of economic and political aspects of warfare. Then there's a whole chemical, biological dimension, which we won't talk about because it's not the essence of your question. But that's what we're really getting at. And I think your viewers can relate to how this is becoming more prolific. It's expanding and growing rapidly, and it's becoming very complicated when they look at their own personal lives. I mean, how many people have had their social media hacked or had their emails hacked, or they've had their pins on their bank accounts, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
If it hasn't happened to them, then they know somebody has happened to, and it's happening at an increasing rate. And this is the nature of how not only adversaries can make advancements, but we have to make advancements in order to keep up or to maintain a technological advantage. And then you have whole new areas of thinking where, I mean, they were always there. We used to call it propaganda or whatever. Now we just use more sophisticated terms. But this is where you get into the dimensions of hybrid warfare, where you're looking at all the levers of power that a state or even non-state, because non-state actors are developing very sophisticated levers of power, and they don't follow the traditional models.
Like when I think of a non-state actor, I think back to the Arab Spring, for example. To me, that was sort of one of the first early kind of really significant non-state actors emerge on such a global scale. That was a prime example of how without arms, without just with information, how things change so rapidly.
Yeah, exactly. And they've got financial backing, they've got technology, they've got the intellectual capacity necessary. They've developed a network, they grow the network, and they're using commercial capabilities. And these are the kinds of things which years ago would have perhaps been unimaginable. They certainly weren't mainstream, and now we're seeing them as being very common. And so you need to imagine a bunch of nasty people locked in a room somewhere thinking of how they can use those types of capabilities to hurt people or to further their own interests by hurting people. And sadly, that's the kind of stuff that modern militaries have to deal with and have to figure out how they're going to cope with it, hopefully before it does damage.